Hello everyone, my name is Kasey Jordan and today I will be talking about Mark Cuban and profiling a leader. To me, Mark Cuban is a leader who found his way through his humble beginnings as a young man driven by his dreams. I chose Mark Cuban because he has proven himself to be an incredible leader over the years, and his first company was Micro Solutions, which was his first ever business that he founded, which specialized in configuring computers and selling PC software, and later on founded Broadcast.com, which was originally named AudioNet. He then sold Broadcast.com for an incredible $5.7 billion. Some interesting facts about Mark Cuban are he began his journey to where he is now from what could be homeless to the billionaire entrepreneur he is now. After moving to Texas at the age of 24, Mark Cuban was beginning his adventure to become the incredible entrepreneurial leader that he is now as a man living on someone else's floor with a broken down car. One of his first jobs was at a business called Mellon Bank, where he learned of what computer systems were and how they could be used, and this eventually led to him teaching himself how to program, which in turn led to the founding of his very first company, Micro Solutions. This shows that Mark Cuban chose his first jobs that could allow him to grow and help him in his career. Some other interesting facts about his companies are Micro Solutions, which was his very first company, encountered a problem with a secretary in which this secretary ended up stealing nearly all of the money from this new upcoming computer and software company. But eventually, Micro Solutions found a way to recover from this setback and ended up bringing in a revenue of around $30 million. And after a few years, Mark Cuban eventually sold his company for $6 million. Mark Cuban's next company, AudioNet, which was later renamed Broadcast.com, was a venture into a field that was more along the interests of Cuban, which was sports. Cuban began this company with his partner Todd Wagner as a way to provide people a more accessible way to listen to games in their everyday life. After about 3.5 years, Broadcast.com had about 900 broadcasting deals, and in 1999 sold to Yahoo for an incredible $5.7 billion. But Cuban and Wagner continued to run the business. And with the money that Mark Cuban received from selling Broadcast.com, he was able to do what he considered a lifelong goal of owning a professional sports team, which ended up being the Dallas Mavericks for around $280 million. And with this new venture, he began to incorporate his own ideals of making sure that the customer receives the best experience possible, which in turn began to bring about massive shifts in the sports franchise field. In Mark Cuban's early adventures, he was working at a job that didn't carry the same ideals that Cuban himself upheld, which was that they didn't listen to their employees' opinions and thoughts. So Cuban left and created his very first company, Micro Solutions. Micro Solutions was a very successful company, but Cuban wasn't truly satisfied with what he had done, so he began to dive deeper into learning about internet technology and eventually created AudioNet. And throughout all of this time, Cuban always kept his focus on the best customer experience that you can provide, which is exemplified by how after buying the Dallas Mavericks, he began to sell tickets for as little as $2 to allow fans to attend games and bring more attention to the Mavericks as well. A means and chain is how goals are connected or linked across an organization. One example from Mark Cuban is him and his partner Scott set the goal to learn about software, then founded the company Micro Solutions. But they didn't try to rush growing the company by setting the goal to gradually establish their presence and acquire customers slowly and safely so as not to quickly become overwhelmed. Value statements are when a company expresses what the company stands for, its core priorities, the values its employees embody, and what its products contribute to the world. An example of this is Cuban had made it very apparent throughout his time as an entrepreneur and in his companies that no matter how big or small a company is, you should never lose sight of your most important priority, which is to make sure the customer has the best experience possible, which I had previously stated as well. And then current reality assessment is when you look at where the organization stands and see what is working and what could be different so as to maximize efficiency and effectiveness in achieving the organization's mission. And an example of this from Cuban is when Cuban began his talk radio station called Broadcast.com, that, as you can tell by the name, broadcast over the internet, and began receiving positive feedback. And because of him listening to what his customers offered, he was able to improve upon his business and eventually accumulated around 900 broadcasting deals. When talking about his leadership roles, after all of the experience that Mark Cuban has accrued over his time as an entrepreneur, he then joined the television show Shark Tank so as to provide guidance and usher in a new era of young and ambitious entrepreneurs alongside fellow, extremely successful entrepreneurs. One example of this is when Cuban and fellow entrepreneur on Shark Tank Kevin O'Leary decided to partner with Julie and Brian Whiteman to provide guidance and support for the company called Groovebook. After this deal was struck, Groovebook's subscription rose from what was 18,000 subscriptions to an incredible 500,000. And then in 2015, Groovebook was sold for an astounding $14.5 million in 2015 to Shutterfly. And now speaking about my personal leadership experience. One example of my own personal leadership experience is an annual event that occurs in my hometown called Sanahatchee. This is where young adults and children take a week out of their time during the Christmas season to go out into the community to provide help for families that have fallen into hard times. For example, my first year we built a lady an entire home because her previous home became too dangerous to live in and was eventually torn down as a result of this. My second year, we completely replaced the roof and redid the bathrooms for a family of 4 with 2 young daughters because the parents had recently become unemployed and harsh weather ravaged their home. And finally, my last year I attended as a college freshman. We built a wheelchair ramp for an elderly couple that had been needing a ramp for about a year because the husband encountered problems that eventually required for him to use a wheelchair. During this previous year, where I was a college student, I was tasked with the opportunity to use what I learned in my 3 years working with this church and hand down my knowledge to new members of this incredible experience so as to make sure they are best equipped for future ventures like this. And my second experience with personal leadership is my experience at the jobs I've worked at. I was first a busboy at a local restaurant called Red Bull Alley, and eventually I became what was called the head busboy and was tasked with delegating tasks to other busboys at this job, as well as training the newly hired busboys and providing proper methods to go about cleaning the restaurant so as to provide our customers with a clean and welcoming environment to eat at. And then my second job, I was a Starbucks barista, and when we had new trainees come in, I had to help teach how to keep the store properly clean and also to provide the best product for our customers in an effective manner. Thank you very much.